Okay, let's try something. Imagine waking up tomorrow and, in a flash, truly understanding your suffering. Not just knowing why it hurts, but grasping with crystal clarity its purpose, its vital role in the grand tapestry of your life. Take a moment. Would that pain feel the same? Would it still be unbearable, or would something deep within you shift, fundamentally altering your experience? Think back to the most excruciating moment you've endured, that instant when pain seemed to stretch beyond all limits. Hold that memory. Now, be honest with yourself. Was it simply the raw intensity of the suffering that broke you, or was it the crushing meaninglessness of it all? The agonizing sense that this torment served no purpose, offered no lesson, and led to no growth. Consider this: we humans possess an astonishing capacity to withstand pain, when we believe it matters. Think of a mother in childbirth, willingly embracing the searing pain for the profound purpose of bringing new life. Picture the athlete pushing their body beyond its limits, driven by the meaningful pursuit of a goal. See the artist pouring raw emotion onto the canvas, transforming personal anguish into a powerful expression. Envision the activist enduring hunger, fueled by the meaningful fight for justice. For them, suffering doesn't simply vanish, it undergoes a profound transformation. It becomes something altogether different, fortified by the armor of meaning. And yet, a startling paradox confronts us. We exist in an age of unprecedented comfort, yet also unprecedented despair. Our bodies experience less physical hardship than any generation in history, while our minds scream louder than ever before. Depression, anxiety, and a pervasive sense of existential dread thrive within our climate-controlled homes and well-nourished bodies. We've largely conquered external suffering, only to witness internal suffering multiply with a vengeance. So ask yourself this: could it be that in eradicating the meaningful hardships that once defined human existence, we've inadvertently created a void that's now filled with formless, purposeless pain? Have we, in essence, traded suffering we understood for a suffering that remains a baffling mystery? What if the true remedy for our pain lies not in its elimination, but in its transformation? What if meaning doesn't merely help us endure suffering, but fundamentally reshapes its very nature, at neurological, psychological, and even spiritual levels? This isn't just abstract philosophical musing. This is the crucial difference between a life crushed by the overwhelming weight of pain and a life galvanized, driven forward, by that very same pain. It's the distinction between suffering experienced as a prison, and suffering embraced as a portal to something more. Therefore, the central question looms before us, demanding an answer: can meaning genuinely destroy suffering, or does it merely provide a temporary mask? And if meaning can destroy it, what profound truths does that reveal about the very essence of pain itself? Hold on to this question. Here's a hard truth: our entire approach to suffering is fundamentally flawed. We've been conditioned to see pain as the ultimate enemy, something to be crushed, numbed, or avoided at all costs. This seemingly obvious idea forms the bedrock of modern life, driving everything from our reliance on pharmaceuticals to our relentless pursuit of pleasure, from overprotective parenting to our endless scrolling through social media, chasing those fleeting dopamine hits. But this assumption hides a fatal flaw, one that philosophers and psychologists have wrestled with for centuries. Friedrich Nietzsche, that iconic thinker, put it bluntly: to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Nietzsche grasped that suffering itself isn't the core issue, it's meaningless suffering that truly devastates us. When pain lacks a context, when it can't be woven into a larger narrative of purpose, it becomes utterly unbearable, a weight that crushes the human spirit. Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of Nazi concentration camps, witnessed this truth firsthand in humanity's darkest hour. He observed, "In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning." A profound insight gained from watching fellow prisoners either succumb to despair or rise above their circumstances. The key difference wasn't the magnitude of the suffering, but the individual's capacity to construct meaning within it. Think about it. Have you ever noticed the starkly different ways people react to similar hardships? What is it that causes one person to crumble under pressure, while another emerges from the fire stronger and more resilient? This is where the hidden problem is revealed. We've been fighting the wrong battle all along. By focusing solely on eliminating suffering, rather than transforming it through meaning, we've inadvertently created a psychological crisis. We've cultivated unrealistic expectations of a pain-free existence, a fantasy that reality can never fulfill, leaving us doubly wounded, first by the inevitable suffering itself, and then by the shock and bewilderment that we're suffering at all. Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, astutely observed, Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. When we actively avoid necessary pain, the discomfort of personal growth, the ache of loss, the struggle of overcoming challenges, we don't actually eliminate suffering. Instead, we unconsciously transmute it into insidious forms like anxiety, depression, addiction, and that nameless, creeping dread that gnaws at the soul. This, in essence, explains the great paradox of our time. As external suffering decreases, internal suffering paradoxically multiplies. We no longer face the daily threats of tigers or famine, yet our own minds have conjured new battlegrounds, equally deadly and destructive. The suffering hasn't vanished, it has simply morphed, becoming more insidious precisely because we fail to recognize it for what it truly is, suffering that desperately craves meaning. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher, famously viewed life as fundamentally driven by relentless will and insatiable desire, a constant striving that inevitably leads to disappointment and pain. However, even Schopenhauer recognized that contemplation and aesthetic experiences could offer fleeting moments of transcendence, instances where meaning momentarily lifts us above the relentless cycle of desire and frustration. The existentialists, notably Jean-Paul Sartre, highlighted how our radical freedom to create meaning is simultaneously our greatest burden and our ultimate salvation as human beings. In a universe devoid of inherent purpose, the responsibility to forge meaning becomes both terrifying and profoundly liberating. This hidden problem extends far beyond individual psychology, permeating our collective relationship with discomfort on a societal level. Our social media algorithms, entertainment choices designed for instant gratification, and consumer habits that prioritize immediate pleasure all reflect a culture fundamentally organized around pain avoidance, rather than meaning creation and purpose. We've constructed elaborate systems that promise comfort and deliver emptiness, a Faustian bargain that leaves us more vulnerable to suffering than any physical hardship ever could. Take a moment for honest self-reflection. To what extent is your daily life structured around avoiding discomfort, rather than actively pursuing meaning and purpose? This is the insidious trap we've unknowingly sprung for ourselves. By desperately attempting to eliminate suffering without comprehending its vital connection to meaning, we've inadvertently amplified its power and dominion over us. We've cultivated a world where pain feels both utterly intolerable and utterly incomprehensible, the precise conditions under which suffering becomes truly, deeply unbearable. The fallout from our collective misunderstanding of the link between meaning and suffering goes far beyond mere temporary discomfort. The consequences are profound and far-reaching. It's actually rewiring our brains, reshaping our societies, and perhaps most alarmingly, weakening our fundamental ability to cope with life's inevitable hardships. To grasp this, let's delve into what happens within the brain when we experience suffering devoid of meaning. The amygdala, our brain's built-in threat detection system, goes into overdrive, becoming hyperactive, while the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for pattern recognition and making sense of our experiences, becomes sluggish and underutilized. This neurological imbalance isn't just unpleasant, it fundamentally distorts our perception of reality. We start perceiving threats everywhere, developing a heightened sensitivity to potential sources of pain, while simultaneously losing our capacity to contextualize and integrate difficult experiences into our lives. Pause and consider this. In our comfort-obsessed world, have you noticed how even minor inconveniences can feel overwhelmingly distressing? This neurological phenomenon helps explain the epidemic of anxiety disorders prevalent in affluent societies. Our brains, designed to thrive on finding meaning in challenges, are instead flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, stress hormones, without the release of those crucial counterbalancing neurochemicals that accompany the satisfaction of overcoming meaningful obstacles. In essence, we've created the perfect storm for perpetual anxiety, constant threat detection, fueled by stress, without the rewarding sense of resolution that comes from achieving something meaningful. But the repercussions extend even deeper, impacting the very core of our identity formation. Developmental psychologists have long recognized that a robust and healthy identity largely emerges from successfully navigating and overcoming meaningful challenges throughout life. Therefore, when we shield ourselves and our children from all formative struggles, we inadvertently cultivate individuals with fragile self-concepts, lacking internal mechanisms for self-validation and resilience. They possess either a clear sense of who they truly are nor a confident understanding of what they are capable of enduring and achieving. This manifests as what psychologists term low psychological resilience, a diminished capacity to effectively bounce back from adversity and setbacks. Numerous studies consistently demonstrate that individuals who've never developed robust meaning-making frameworks to process suffering experience significantly longer recovery times from adversity and exhibit higher rates of trauma in response to objectively similar negative events. In a cruel twist, they end up suffering more from the suffering itself. Take a moment for introspection. Reflect on a time in your own life when you experienced significant personal growth because of a difficult challenge you overcame. How might you be a different person today if you hadn't faced and conquered that particular hardship? Furthermore, the cognitive biases at play compound these issues. The well-known hedonic treadmill effect describes our innate tendency to rapidly revert to a baseline level of happiness, regardless of any positive changes in our external circumstances. However, we often fail to recognize that this same principle applies equally to suffering. We adapt to its absence with surprising speed, paradoxically making us more sensitive to even minor discomforts. What once would have been dismissed as trivial inconveniences now register as significant sources of distress and anguish. Culturally, these consequences manifest in the paradoxical rise of both an exaggerated victim identity and a disturbing callousness towards genuine suffering in others. When pain is stripped of meaning, we either inflate minor hardships to manufacture a sense of purpose for ourselves, or we become emotionally numb to suffering altogether, lacking the ability to empathize with pain we cannot contextualize within a meaningful framework. This leads to fractured communities, tragically divided between those performing victimhood for attention and those dismissively rejecting genuine hardship, either of which fosters the healthy and meaningful integration of suffering into the human experience. Perhaps most insidiously of all, our meaning-starved relationship with suffering has contributed to what some philosophers poignantly call the purpose gap, a pervasive and collective sense that life lacks inherent significance and meaning, despite unprecedented levels of material abundance and comfort. This existential vacuum, this gaping hole in the soul, doesn't remain empty for long. It invariably fills with nihilism, fundamentalism, or desperate and ultimately unsatisfying hedonism, each a misguided attempt to compensate for the deep-seated need for meaning that our pain-avoidant culture so miserably fails to address. Here's a crucial question for you to ponder. In which specific areas of your own life might you be unconsciously avoiding necessary discomfort, and what deeper meaning might you be sacrificing as a result? However, the most alarming consequence of all is the gradual erosion, the slow death, of our capacity for transcendence. Throughout human history, our greatest achievements, our deepest and most meaningful connections, and our most profound insights have consistently emerged not in spite of suffering, but precisely through its meaningful integration and transformation. From art that moves us to tears and scientific breakthroughs born from relentless failure, to spiritual awakenings forged in the crucible of darkness and social movements birthed from the flames of injustice, meaningful suffering has served as the catalyst, the essential spark, for humanity's most sublime and transcendent expressions. These powerful examples transcend cultures and traditions, from Viktor Frankl's profound insights gained within the horrors of concentration camps to the transformative principles of Buddhism, from indigenous rites of passage that embrace pain as integral to growth to the Japanese concept of kintsugi, which celebrates the beauty of broken pottery repaired with gold, highlighting its history and resilience. Therefore, by severing this vital connection between suffering and meaning, we haven't merely made ourselves more miserable in the present, we've tragically cut ourselves off from access to the very experiences that imbue life with profound depth, richness, and significance. We've made a perilous trade, exchanging depth for shallow comfort, profound significance for superficial safety, and in doing so, we've unwittingly created a world where suffering feels not only intensely painful but utterly pointless, the precise and toxic conditions under which it becomes truly and utterly unbearable. But, and this is crucial, there exists another path forward, a rebellion, if you will, against the tyranny of meaningless pain. There's a powerful rebellion waiting to ignite within each of us, a radical transformation of our relationship with suffering, one that goes beyond mere endurance, transmuting pain into something utterly unrecognizable from its original form. And listen carefully, this isn't about toxic positivity or blind, naive optimism. This is about a fundamental shift in how reality itself operates within your consciousness, a rewiring of your inner world. The very first act of this rebellion is the empowering realization that meaning isn't a hidden treasure you stumble upon, it's a muscle you actively cultivate and build. Viktor Frankl wasn't passively observing meaning amidst his suffering. He was fiercely constructing it, brick by brick, in the face of unimaginable horror. Even when stripped of every external freedom, he tenaciously clung to the last and most profound human freedom, the ability to choose his own attitude, his own response, to his utterly devastating circumstances. This isn't just feel-good inspiration, it's neurologically transformative, backed by science. When you intentionally and actively create meaning around your suffering, you trigger tangible changes in your brain chemistry, specifically activating the prefrontal cortex, your meaning-making center, and simultaneously dampening the amygdala's hyperactive threat response. Here's a crucial question for deep reflection. What painful situation are you currently facing that could potentially be viewed through an entirely different, meaning-focused lens? Consider the seemingly counterintuitive wisdom of the ancient Stoics, who deliberately sought out discomfort, sleeping on hard floors, wearing minimal clothing even in winter's chill, or intentionally practicing periods of hunger, not for masochistic pleasure, but to forge and strengthen their meaning-making muscles. They understood a profound truth that our modern world has largely forgotten, that chosen suffering, willingly embraced with a clear sense of purpose, builds a unique form of resilience that randomly encountered suffering can never replicate. They were essentially training themselves, through consistent practice, to automatically assign meaning to any form of pain, even before it arose. The practical application of this wisdom begins with what psychologists aptly term voluntary hardship, the conscious and intentional embrace of challenging experiences, not for the sake of mere comfort, but for the sake of profound personal growth and development. Individuals who consistently engage in voluntary hardship, whether through rigorous athletic training, the arduous process of creative endeavors, demanding intellectual pursuits, or dedicated spiritual disciplines, develop robust neural pathways that automatically contextualize suffering within pre-existing frameworks of meaning and purpose. In essence, they've trained their minds to proactively seek and find purpose within pain, often even before the suffering manifests. As a tangible first step, this week, choose one small comfort that you routinely enjoy and temporarily relinquish it, not as a form of self-punishment, but as a deliberate exercise in cultivating your capacity to discover meaning within discomfort. This offers a powerful explanation for why individuals who routinely push their limits and boundaries in chosen domains often exhibit remarkable resilience when confronted with unforeseen and unchosen suffering. The marathon runner battling a cancer diagnosis, the entrepreneur navigating devastating financial loss, the artist enduring relentless rejection of their work, they've already forged the neural architecture, the internal framework, necessary to effectively transform suffering through the alchemy of meaning. Compelling historical examples abound across diverse cultures and time periods. Nelson Mandela, confined to 27 years of brutal imprisonment, alchemized his suffering into a crucible for the development of unparalleled wisdom, forgiveness, and compassion. Ludwig van Beethoven, despite the agonizing loss of his hearing, composed some of the most transcendent and moving music the world has ever known. Frida Kahlo, throughout her life, transmuted her relentless physical agony into breathtaking and deeply impactful art that continues to resonate with millions globally. In each of these profound instances, suffering wasn't simply overcome or erased, it was actively metabolized, processed, and ultimately transformed into meaning, purpose, and enduring legacy. Take a moment for quiet reflection. Who in your own life, either personally or historically, has exemplified this extraordinary ability to transform suffering into meaning and growth? And perhaps more importantly, what invaluable lessons can you glean and integrate from their powerful example? This rebellion, this radical shift, necessitates a conscious reframing of three fundamental and pervasive questions we often ask ourselves in times of pain, instead of instinctively asking, "How can I possibly avoid this pain?" Begin consciously asking, "What deeper meaning can this pain potentially serve in my life?" Instead of succumbing to the victim mentality of, "Why is this unjustly happening to me?" proactively ask, "What is this challenging experience actively preparing me for in the future?" And instead of anxiously fixating on, "When will this excruciating ordeal finally end?" shift your focus to the transformative question, "In what profound ways is this suffering actively changing and shaping me as a person?" These aren't mere semantic tricks or superficial word games. They represent radical and potent perspective shifts that activate entirely different neural networks and unlock previously untapped psychological resources within you. They empower you to transition from a passive victim of circumstance to an active and empowered creator of meaning in your own life. This transformative path requires embracing what the theologian Paul Tillich eloquently termed the courage to be, confronting the inherent anxiety of human existence not by futilely attempting to eliminate its source, but by discovering a meaning and purpose that transcends and encompasses the anxiety itself. This profound concept explains why individuals with deeply held personal values, strong ethical frameworks, or robust spiritual practices often demonstrate significantly greater resilience in the face of suffering. Their pain, however intense, exists within a larger, meaningful context that imbues it with purpose and significance. Here's a practical exercise to implement immediately. The next time you encounter a difficult or challenging moment, consciously and deliberately choose one of the reframed questions presented above. Pay close attention to the subtle yet powerful ways in which your experience begins to shift and transform as you actively shift your perspective. This rebellion, this journey of transformation, isn't achieved through grand, heroic gestures or singular acts of extraordinary willpower. Rather, it's cultivated and sustained through small, consistent, daily practices of meaning-making, actively engaging with philosophy, not as abstract and irrelevant theory, but as a practical guide for navigating life's complexities and challenges. Consistently journaling, not merely to chronicle events, but to intentionally extract meaning, patterns, and valuable insights from those experiences. Cultivating a supportive and meaningful community, not just for superficial comfort and distraction, but for the collective construction and sharing of meaning and purpose. Practicing meditation, not as an escape from reality, but as a powerful tool for observing reality with greater clarity and discerning its inherent meaningfulness. Ultimately, the most profound and empowering realization of this rebellion lies in recognizing that suffering imbued with meaning isn't simply less painful or more bearable. It metamorphoses into something fundamentally and qualitatively different. Athletes intimately understand this, often referring to it as the sweet pain experienced when pushing physical limits and achieving peak performance. Creators and artists deeply resonate with this, knowing it as the exquisite agony, the intense struggle, of bringing something entirely new and original into existence. Parents profoundly grasp this, living it daily as the beautiful yet challenging struggle of nurturing and raising children into adulthood. This isn't suffering merely diminished or tolerated, it's suffering magnificently transfigured, alchemically transformed through the potent power of meaning. And the path to this transformative rebellion lies directly ahead, illuminated by one final, incredibly powerful revelation. Because here's the ultimate, liberating truth: suffering, in and of itself, is not inherently your enemy. Rather, it's raw, unformed material, brimming with untapped potential. It's the very clay from which you have the power to sculpt and mold your character, the intense fire that tempers and strengthens your spirit, the precise chisel that carves away the superficial and inessential, ultimately revealing the unique and magnificent masterpiece that resides deep within you. This, my friends, is the profound alchemy of suffering, the miraculous transformation of agonizing pain into purposeful growth, crippling despair into hard-won depth and wisdom, and shattering brokenness into enduring and breathtaking beauty. Take a moment for quiet contemplation. Reflect on a time in your own life when adversity, in its own way, forced you to evolve and become a better version of yourself. What invaluable lessons did you learn during that challenging period? And looking back, how did that experience fundamentally shape and mold the person you are today? These deeply personal moments, when thoughtfully reflected upon, often unveil a hidden yet powerful structure, a recurring pattern of profound growth emerging directly from the crucible of struggle. Viktor Frankl, Friedrich Nietzsche, Nelson Mandela, these iconic figures, in their own unique ways, all grasped and embodied this profound truth: that pain imbued with purpose possesses the extraordinary capacity to reshape and redefine identity. It cultivates resilience that becomes an unshakable bedrock, fortitude that withstands any storm, and a depth of character that mere comfort and ease could never even begin to foster. But here lies the crucial challenge, the pivotal decision point. What will you choose to do with the inevitable suffering that life presents? Will you passively allow it to hollow you out, leaving you empty and diminished, or will you actively and intentionally mold it into something meaningful, something that enriches your life and the lives of others? This is where the true rebellion begins, not a futile and misguided rebellion against pain itself, but a courageous and empowering rebellion against the insidious and destructive notion that pain must be inherently meaningless. You possess the innate power, the inherent agency, to infuse your suffering with profound purpose, to bravely carve your own path through the storm, rather than being helplessly swept away and consumed by it. Pause right now. Take a deep breath. And genuinely consider this. What is one significant difficulty or challenge that you're currently facing in your life? How might you consciously choose to reframe it, not as an insurmountable obstacle designed to break you, but as a transformative crucible, a powerful catalyst for growth and self-discovery? Take a pen and paper and write it down, or speak it aloud with conviction, and allow the transformative shift to begin within you, starting this very moment. As you carry the essence of this video forward with you, please embrace this empowering thought. Meaning does not magically eliminate suffering from your life, but it possesses the extraordinary power to fundamentally alter its very nature. It transforms suffering into a wise and compassionate teacher, into a potent force that refines and strengthens you, rather than diminishing and destroying you. And so, I leave you with this final, deeply personal question. In the depths of your own experience, can you actively choose to find purpose and meaning within your pain? I warmly invite you to share a moment when struggle profoundly shaped you into the person you are today, or a perspective or insight that provided you with the strength to endure a difficult time. Let's collectively build a supportive and empowering community here, because in sharing our stories and constructing meaning together, we undeniably make the burden lighter and the journey more meaningful for everyone.